Ladies and gentlemen, I need your attention, not just your ears, but your spirit, your mind, and that quiet place inside you where decisions are made that shape the rest of your life. Because what I'm about to say is not just another speech. It is not information. It is not motivation. It is a confrontation. A confrontation between who you are today and who you were created to become. There comes a moment in every human life when everything changes. Not gradually, not politely, but suddenly. A moment when something shifts inside you so deeply that you cannot go back to the person you used to be. A moment when you see clearly, maybe for the first time, that your life has been too small for your potential. And I stand here today because I had that moment. But let me be honest with you. It didn't come wrapped in comfort. It didn't arrive with applause. It came with discomfort. It came with questions. It came with the painful realization that I had been living beneath my capacity. You see, most people are not destroyed by failure. They are destroyed by living a life that never demanded their greatness. Let that sink in. Because the greatest tragedy in life is not death. The greatest tragedy is dying with everything still inside you, ideas never expressed, gifts never used, impact never made. And I realized that was the direction I was heading. I was busy, but not effective. I was active, but not purposeful. I was existing, but I was not living. And then something happened. Not outside me, but inside me. A question rose up in my spirit, and it would not leave me alone. It kept echoing louder and louder until I could not ignore it anymore. Why are you here? Not what job do you have? Not what people think about you. Not what you've been through, but why are you here? Because if you don't know why you exist, you will misuse your life, trying to become everything except what you were designed to be. And that question shook me. It forced me to confront the truth that I had been living by default, instead of by design. And many of you in this room, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've been surviving, not thriving. You've been reacting, not creating. You've been settling when something inside you has been screaming. There's more. That voice is not your enemy. That voice is your assignment calling you. Listen carefully. Your life is not an accident. You were not born just to pay bills, go through routines, and disappear. There is something locked inside of you that this world needs. Not wants, needs. And until you discover it, you will always feel incomplete, no matter how much success you accumulate. Because success without purpose is just sophisticated emptiness. And that was my turning point. I realized that I had been chasing things instead of discovering myself. I had been measuring my life by comparison instead of calling. I had been trying to fit in instead of standing out. And that is exhausting. Let me tell you something powerful. When you become who you were created to be, you don't have to compete with anyone, because no one else can be you. But the problem is, most people never discover who they are. They inherit identities. They borrow expectations. They wear masks so long that they forget their own face. And then they wonder why they feel lost. You cannot find fulfillment living someone else's vision. You cannot find peace pretending to be something you're not. And you cannot step into greatness while holding on to fear. Because fear is the number one thief of purpose. Fear will convince you to stay where you are. Fear will tell you you're not ready. Fear will remind you of your past, your failures, your limitations. But hear me clearly, fear is not a signal to stop. It is a signal that you are standing at the edge of transformation. Everything you desire is on the other side of the decision you are avoiding. And I had to make that decision. I had to decide that I would no longer live a life dictated by comfort. I had to decide that I would confront my excuses. I had to decide that I would stop waiting for permission to become who I was meant to be. Because no one is coming to give you permission. No one is going to tap you on the shoulder and say, now is your time. You have to declare that for yourself. And that declaration is not made with words. It is made with action. It is made when you wake up and choose discipline over distraction. It is made when you invest in growth instead of comfort. It is made when you step forward, even when you feel unqualified. Because let me tell you something that changed my life forever. You don't become ready before you start. You become ready because you start. And many of you have been waiting for confidence, waiting for clarity, waiting for the perfect moment. That moment does not exist. Clarity comes from movement. Confidence is built through action. And purpose is revealed when you commit, not when you hesitate. I stand here today not as someone who figured everything out, but as someone who decided to stop running from what I was meant to do. And that decision changed everything. It changed how I think. It changed how I see challenges. It changed how I view failure. Because failure is no longer something to fear. It is feedback. It is information. It is a teacher. The only real failure is never trying. The only real failure is quitting on yourself. And I refuse to do that. I refuse to live a life that looks successful on the outside, but feels empty on the inside. I refuse to shrink to fit environments that were never designed for my growth. And I challenge you today, stop shrinking. Stop apologizing for your ambition. Stop dimming your light to make others comfortable. You were not created to blend in. You were created to stand out, to make impact, to bring something into this world that only you can deliver. And yes, it will cost you. Growth always costs something. It will cost you comfort. It will cost you familiarity. It may even cost you relationships. But the price of staying the same is far greater. Because staying the same will cost you your destiny. And that is a price too high to pay. So today, I ask you, not casually, but urgently, what are you doing with your life? Are you living intentionally or accidentally? Are you building something meaningful or just passing time? Are you becoming more or just getting older? Because time does not guarantee growth. Time only guarantees that time has passed. Growth is a decision. And that decision must be made daily. Not once, not occasionally, daily. You must wake up and choose to become better. You must wake up and choose to align your actions with your purpose. You must wake up and choose to move even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's uncertain, even when it's hard. Because greatness is not convenient. It is not easy, but it is possible. And it is possible for you, not for someone else, not for the person sitting next to you. For you, but you must believe that. You must see yourself differently, because you will never rise above the image you have of yourself. If you see yourself as limited, you will live limited. If you see yourself as average, you will produce average. But if you begin to see yourself as capable, as valuable, as necessary, your life will begin to shift. Not overnight, but inevitably, because your beliefs shape your decisions, and your decisions shape your future, and your future is not something that just happens to you. It is something you create. Every choice you make is a brick, and you are building your life one decision at a time. So build wisely, build intentionally, build with purpose. Because one day you will have to live inside what you've built. And I want you to build something you're proud of, not something you settled for, not something you regret, but something that reflects the fullness of who you are, because you owe that to yourself. And not just to yourself, but to the world. There are people whose lives will be changed because you chose to step into your purpose. There are doors that will open because you decided to walk in your calling. There are problems that will be solved because you decided to use your gift. But if you don't move, those things remain undone. And that is why this moment matters. This is not just another day. This is a decision point. You can walk out of here and go back to what is familiar, what is comfortable, what is easy. Or you can walk out of here with a new perspective, a new commitment, a new fire, a fire that says, I will not waste my life. A fire that says, I will discover who I am. A fire that says, I will pursue my purpose with everything I have. Because once you make that decision, everything changes. Your focus changes. Your habits change. Your conversations change. Your environment changes. And eventually, your results change. But it starts with you. Not your circumstances, not your background, not your resources, you. And I know some of you are thinking, you don't understand my situation. You're right, I may not. But I understand potential. I understand that greatness is not reserved for a select few. It is available to anyone willing to pay the price, anyone willing to grow, anyone willing to persist, anyone willing to believe that their life has meaning beyond what they've experienced so far, and that includes you. So don't let your past define your future. Don't let your mistakes limit your vision. Don't let your fear silence your calling, because you are more than your past. You are more than your failures. You are more than your current reality. You are a possibility. And that possibility is waiting for a decision. So, make it. Make the decision to grow. Make the decision to act. Make the decision to become. Because one day you will look back at your life and you will either say, I went for it, or you will say, I wish I had. And trust me, Regret is far heavier than risk. So take the risk. Step forward. Start where you are. Use what you have. And become who you were created to be. Because this right here, this realization, this decision, this moment, this is the speech that changed my life. And if you allow it, it can change yours too. And this brings me to something that many people avoid, misunderstand, or try to replace with shortcuts. The relationship between discipline and discovering your true identity. Because the truth is, you cannot discover who you really are by accident. You don't stumble into identity. You don't drift into purpose. You don't wake up one day fully aware of your potential without paying a price for that awareness. Identity is revealed through discipline. And I know that word discipline does not excite most people. It sounds restrictive. It sounds demanding. It sounds like something that takes away freedom. But what if I told you the opposite is true? What if discipline is not the enemy of freedom, but the pathway to it? Because without discipline, you don't control your life. Your impulses do. Without discipline, your environment shapes you instead of you shaping it. Without discipline, you become a reaction instead of a creator. And when you live like that, you never really meet yourself. You only meet versions of yourself that are shaped by pressure, by convenience, by fear, and by distraction. So the question is not whether you have an identity. The question is whether you have discovered it. Because there is a difference between existing and knowing who you are. There is a difference between having potential and accessing it. There is a difference between being capable and being consistent. And discipline is the bridge that connects those differences. Let me explain something that changed the way I see myself. Your identity is not just something you think about. It is something you prove through what you repeatedly do, not what you say, not what you intend, not what you plan, what you do consistently. Because consistency exposes who you really are. Anyone can be focused for a day. Anyone can be motivated for a moment. Anyone can feel inspired in an environment like this. But who are you when the environment changes? Who are you when the pressure increases? Who are you when no one is watching? That is where identity is revealed. And discipline is what stabilizes that identity. Discipline is what keeps you aligned when your emotions are unstable. Discipline is what keeps you moving when your motivation disappears. Discipline is what keeps you committed when your results are delayed. And let me tell you something that most people don't want to hear. Your emotions are not reliable. They are powerful, but they are not dependable. If you build your life on how you feel, your life will constantly shift. You will start things and not finish them. You will commit and then withdraw. You will dream and then doubt. But when you build your life on discipline, something changes. You stop negotiating with your potential. You stop asking yourself, do I feel like it? And you start asking, is this who I said I am becoming? That question will change your life. Because now your actions are not based on comfort. They are based on identity. And identity Driven behavior is the most powerful force you can develop. When you begin to see yourself differently, you begin to act differently. And when you act differently long enough, you become different. This is why discipline is not just about habits, it is about alignment. It is about bringing your daily actions into agreement with your deeper purpose. Because many people say they want more, but they don't live in a way that reflects that desire. They say they want growth, but they avoid discomfort. They say they want success, but they resist structure. They say they want change, but they hold on to old patterns. And that conflict creates frustration, because you cannot live one way and expect a completely different outcome. Your life responds to your discipline, not your desires. So if you want to discover who you really are, you have to be willing to do what you don't feel like doing. Not once, not occasionally, but consistently. Because discipline reveals capacity. There are things inside of you that you will never see until you demand more from yourself. There is strength inside you that comfort will never reveal. There is focus inside you that distraction will never allow. There is creativity inside you that inconsistency will never unlock. Discipline pulls those things out of you. It forces you to confront your limits and then expand them. And that process is uncomfortable. Let's be honest about that. Growth is not comfortable. Becoming is not convenient. Transformation is not easy, but it is necessary, because if you avoid discomfort, you avoid discovery. And if you avoid discovery, you avoid identity. You remain a mystery to yourself. And there is nothing more frustrating than having potential you cannot access. You feel it. You sense it. You know there is more in you. But you cannot seem to reach it. That is not a lack of ability. That is a lack of discipline. Because discipline is what gives you access to yourself. It strips away excuses. It removes distractions. It exposes your patterns. And it forces you to deal with who you really are, not who you pretend to be. And that is where the real work begins. Because discovering your identity is not always comfortable. Sometimes you discover that you've been settling. Sometimes you discover that you've been avoiding responsibility. Sometimes you discover that you've been living beneath your standards. But that awareness is powerful. Because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And now you have a choice. You can either ignore it and go back to what is easy, or you can respond to it and step into what is necessary. And discipline is what allows you to respond. It gives you the structure to change. It gives you the framework to grow. It gives you the stability to evolve. Without discipline, your intentions remain ideas. With discipline, your intentions become reality. And this is where many people get it wrong. They think discipline is about restriction. They think it limits them. But discipline is actually what unlocks you. Because when you become disciplined, you gain control over your time. You gain control over your focus. You gain control over your decisions. And control creates clarity. And clarity reveals identity. You begin to see patterns in yourself. You begin to recognize what you are capable of. You begin to understand how you operate at your best. And that awareness is powerful. Because now you are not guessing anymore. You are not drifting anymore. You are not reacting anymore. You are living intentionally. And intentional living is where identity is fully expressed. Because now your actions are not random. They are aligned. Your choices are not scattered. They are strategic. Your life is not accidental. It is designed. And that changes everything. Because when you know who you are, you stop chasing things that don't matter. You stop saying yes to things that drain you. You stop comparing yourself to people who are on a different path. You become focused. And focus is a byproduct of discipline. Because discipline trains your mind to stay committed. It trains your mind to stay aligned. It trains your mind to stay locked in, even when distractions are everywhere. And we live in a world full of distractions. Opportunities to waste time. Opportunities to lose focus. Opportunities to avoid growth. And if you are not disciplined, you will fall into those patterns without even realizing it. Days will pass. Weeks will pass. Years will pass. And you will look back wondering where the time went. But discipline protects you from that. It anchors you. It grounds you. It keeps you connected to what matters most. And that connection is what allows you to discover yourself at a deeper level, because identity is not discovered in moments of convenience. It is discovered in moments of commitment. When you choose to show up, when you choose to follow through, when you choose to stay consistent, even when it's difficult, even when it's boring, even when it's repetitive, because repetition builds identity. What you do repeatedly becomes who you are, not occasionally, not emotionally, repeatedly. So if you want to become focused, you must practice focus. If you want to become disciplined, you must practice discipline. If you want to become strong, you must practice strength. And over time, those practices stop feeling like effort and start feeling like identity. You don't have to convince yourself anymore. You don't have to force yourself anymore. It becomes natural because you have trained yourself to operate at that level. And that is when you begin to see the real power of discipline. It transforms effort into identity. It transforms actions into habits. It transforms habits into character. And character defines your life. Not your talent. Not your background. Not your circumstances. Your character. And your character is built through discipline. Day by day. Choice by choice. Action by action. And as you build that, something incredible begins to happen. You begin to trust yourself. And that is one of the most powerful things you can develop. Because when you trust yourself, you move differently. You think differently. You decide differently. You no longer hesitate the way you used to. You no longer doubt the way you used to. Because you have evidence. Evidence that you can show up. Evidence that you can follow through. Evidence that you can grow. And that evidence builds confidence. Not the kind that is loud and temporary, but the kind that is quiet and unshakable. The kind that comes from discipline. Because confidence is not built by what you say. It is built by what you prove to yourself. And discipline is how you prove it. Every time you do what you said you would do, you reinforce your identity. Every time you follow through, you strengthen your belief. Every time you stay consistent, you expand your capacity. And over time, that becomes who you are. Not something you try to be, something you are. And when you reach that point, you are no longer searching for your identity. You are living it. You are expressing it. You are walking in it. Because discipline didn't just change your behavior. It revealed your true self. It stripped away the distractions. It removed the inconsistencies. It exposed the real you underneath everything else. And that version of you is powerful. Not because it is perfect, but because it is aligned with purpose, aligned with growth, aligned with truth. And when you live in that alignment, your life begins to make sense in a way it never did before. Your decisions become clearer. Your direction becomes stronger. Your impact becomes greater. Because you are no longer divided. You are not one person in your mind and another in your actions. You are whole, and wholeness is where fulfillment lives. Because fulfillment is not found in achievement alone. It is found in alignment. It is found in becoming who you were meant to be and living that out daily through discipline, through consistency, through intentional action. And that is the relationship. Discipline is not separate from identity. It is the pathway to it. It is the process through which identity is revealed, refined, and reinforced. So if you are serious about discovering who you are, look at what you do daily. Look at how you spend your time. Look at what you tolerate. Look at what you avoid. Because those things are telling you a story, and if you don't like that story, you have the power to change it through discipline, not motivation, not intention, discipline.